So for a long time, cryptocurrency has obviously been in the news for the environmental impact of cryptocurrency mining, and with the switch to proof of stake for Ethereum, they obviously limited their energy crisis event by 95%, something like that. So in this article, we're going over crypto killing the planet, and then we're going to look at the Bitcoin Energy Consumption Index and the cost of mining one Bitcoin around the world. So this article came out today. It says that the transaction fees for cryptocurrencies can be next to nothing, and the traceless, decentralized monetary system has certainly caused a lot of buzz, but scientists are increasingly concerned about its environmental costs. Obviously, this has been in the news for a while. We're just going to go for an overall view of what it looks like. Cryptocurrency mining has grown explosively in the US since 2020. Today, an estimated 38% of Bitcoin is mined in the US, resulting in 30 million tons of excess carbon dioxide emissions. Environmentalists warn that the currency is not only devastating the planet, but communities living close to mining farms, especially as cryptocurrencies run primarily on fossil fuels. So it goes over the stress here. Bitcoin consumed 36 billion kilowatt hours of electricity from 2021 to 2022, as much as all the electricity consumed in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Rhode Island put together at the same time period. The massive energy consumption of cryptocurrency mining threatens to undermine the decades of progress towards achieving climate goals and reducing local pollution. Reports also warn that cryptocurrency mining practices raise costs and risks for utilities over their ratepayers, can stress electric grids, and flood communities with noise. Obviously, we've seen in Texas that they had that whole thing over the heat wave where they wanted to limit electricity. So they actually gave the crypto mining companies credits for electricity, which ended up being more than what the cryptocurrency mining would have been worth. The cryptocurrency mining industry already uses half the electricity of the entire global banking sector, and it will overtake the sector in 2 years at current trends. Meanwhile, the ratio of Bitcoin's energy consumption to humans who have Bitcoin is extremely high. Rather than investing in long-term energy infrastructure that benefits the grid, the cryptocurrency mining industry seeks the fastest energy that can serve its needs and looks for minimal regulation and oversight. In practice, this translates to mining cryptocurrency at coal and gas plants, straining the electrical grid in Texas and tapping into power that the grids are often fossil fuel heavy. So obviously we just talked about that. In Texas, the energy crisis that happened in the summer obviously meant that the crypto mining rigs had to shut off. Most mining facilities draw their power from the grid. This means electricity is generated by whatever existing energy is in place in the region. It then goes on to say defenders of crypto claim that the mining is spurring new renewable development and stabilizing the grid, but no grid anywhere in the US is 100% renewable yet. So what they're saying is that this crypto mining crisis could usher in new renewable energy sources and the infrastructure to set it up. Clean energy allocated to cryptocurrency mining doesn't do anything to decarbonize the grid, and there are few mining facilities that are building renewables to even power their own operations, let alone send to the grid. Cryptocurrency mining proponents claim that mining only uses wasted energy from solar or wind overproduction. This is not true. Obviously, they use coal and gas, but they do actually use runoff gas that is not being used. I know a lot of people in Texas and in other places where they have oil fields will use the runoff gas instead of using the actual grid gas. But mining operations consume 24-hour energy per day, not just when the excess is solar or wind, meaning mining operations would fail to be profitable only using the hours that they wasted energy is available. Per coin climate change damages for Bitcoin were increasing rather than decreasing as the industry grew. A scientific report study called The Economist Estimations of Bitcoin Mining Climate Damage demonstrates closer resemblance to digital crude than gold has been found. And then it goes on to show this figure that on average, each $1 in Bitcoin market value created was responsible for 35 cents in global climate damages, which as a share of the market value is a range between beef production and crude oil burned as gasoline. So that's the kind of energy range that we're looking at of how it actually affects the climate. So crude oil is obviously affecting the climate way more than what Bitcoin is affecting. But the whole point of cryptocurrency mining is that you get something from it. Obviously, if you're just burning crude oil and mining it, you don't actually get something from it apart from the crude oil. So they're using this energy to produce something that is useful as currency. According to the paper taken together, these results represent a set of sustainability red flags, while proponents refer to cryptocurrency as digital gold. From a climate damage perspective, it operates more like digital crude oil, the study has pointed out. It then goes on to say that by mid-September of 2022, approximately 199.65 million metric tons of CO2 were attributed to the Bitcoin network, and 92% of those emissions occurred since 2018, according to the University of Cambridge. Coal is the largest single energy source for Bitcoin mining worldwide, accounting for 36.6% of it, finding also found. Fossil fuels account for nearly 2/3 of Bitcoin mining's total electricity mix. This finding deviates wildly from the industry's likely incorrect estimate that 59% of mining comes from sustainable energy sources. It then goes on to talk about cooling, how mining requires thousands of machines whirring constantly to solve complex equations. Obviously, we know if you're a Bitcoin miner, it's very hard to cool down your operations. A lot of people just let their rigs run hot just because it's more efficient at a certain temperature. This is not really as much of a problem as just mining Bitcoin in general, but obviously you want to cool your rigs to keep them more efficient and extend their life. If they get too hot, they can damage the CPUs or the chips that they are mining on. Cryptocurrency mining facilities are major emitters of air pollutants, and when cryptocurrency miners rely on the public grid, they can stick everyday people to the bill. Obviously, we see these places like in the UK, they have a very high electricity price. A study in 2021 estimates the power demands of cryptocurrency mining operations in upstate New York push an annual electric bill by around $159 million for small businesses and $79 million for individuals. So you take that number and you split it up between the small businesses and the individuals. That's how much it raised the price by. Lastly, it goes on to say about the action. Without action to limit cryptocurrency mining, we'll not meet goals set forth by the Paris Agreement, and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change will limit warnings to 2 degrees Celsius. So there's this kind of metric that talks about the climate change and limit warning to the whole world. And obviously cryptocurrency has affected this metric, and the Paris Agreement is talking about how countries should reduce their carbon dioxide emissions, and obviously cryptocurrency is not held as something that is useful to carbon dioxide emissions. Next, if we look at this Bitcoin Energy Consumption Index, it says here the Bitcoin Energy Consumption Index provides the latest estimates for total energy consumption of the Bitcoin network. So in here in red, we have the estimated terawatts per hour per year, and then under it is the minimum terawatts hour per year. Obviously, we see early in 2017, we have an upscale of energy. This is because of the halving of Bitcoin. So if you didn't know, when Bitcoin halves, the electricity required in theory should double to mine the same amount of Bitcoin. So after this halving happened, it actually ran up the energy, as we can see on this red line, and then dipped down into the crypto winter, which we all know is in 2018 to 2019. And as we slowly move into 2020, there's an upscale, which is obviously because of the halving as well that happened in 2020. So there was one in 2016, and now there's one in 2020. And now we have an upscale after that because obviously the price of Bitcoin is gone up, but the energy required is also doubled as well. And then it runs all the way up nearly to present day, but drops off at around June 2022, where we had that big crypto crash where Bitcoin was sitting at around $20,000 per coin. Obviously, it made it unprofitable to mine, so people got off the network. But now it's starting to ramp up again, and we'll probably see this same chart repeat itself on a larger scale in the next coming years for this next Bitcoin halving. Lastly, if we look at the cost to mine one Bitcoin, this chart was actually made around, I think, 3-4 months ago, something like that. And it says here the cost to mine one Bitcoin in every country. And remember, the cost of one Bitcoin right now is sitting at around $20,000. So any figure on this chart under $20,000 would be considered profitable and actually turn in a profit in terms of mining. If you look in the top right corner, you can see the most profitable country is Kuwait, obviously because they have a lot of oil in that country, but it also doesn't have the infrastructure for crypto mining. I wouldn't really recommend sending your rigs out there just to have them hosted. There's other countries around that area like Yemen, which also doesn't have the infrastructure but has very cheap energy, according to this chart. It also shows Kazakhstan up there, which is one of the big crypto mining hubs in the world. I think it holds around 13% of the hash rate, which is a large chunk. That's around half of what the United States consumes. On the left side of the chart, you can see that the United States, the average is around $21,000 per Bitcoin. So they're actually making less profits, and it's unprofitable in the United States overall on an average. And then we look into South America, and we can see that the most expensive place to mine would be Venezuela, in the blue here. And it costs $246,000 to mine one Bitcoin in Venezuela. I don't really know why this is. It's probably because they don't have enough energy resources, and they might not be buying energy into the country. But in theory, it costs 10 times more to mine one Bitcoin than it does to sell one Bitcoin. And then if you take a look at the European chart at the top, basically no countries in Europe are profitable right now, and the energy prices are obviously soaring in Europe. There are places in Africa like Sudan and Ethiopia which have very low costs of electricity, but they obviously don't have infrastructure as well. We've seen this with Kuwait or Yemen. They have very low electricity prices, but the infrastructure is not there to mine Bitcoin, and I wouldn't recommend sending your Bitcoin mining rigs out there. Lastly, I want to talk about that Africa is actually the best opportunity to bring in renewable energy, just because they have so much sun in Africa. If you had the infrastructure to set up solar panels across these countries in Africa, like Sudan, like Ethiopia, like South Africa, like Namibia, stuff like that, places which are really hot throughout the year, plus 200 days of sun, they can obviously run crypto mining rigs with renewable energy. That's, I think, where we'll probably see the first kind of 100% renewable energy sources of Bitcoin mining pop up. Either that or there'll be an expensive one in the United States before that. But it's a good opportunity to set up infrastructure in that country, and even if Bitcoin mining does fizzle out at some point in the future, the solar panels can be used to plug into the grid, and then they have access to all this extra energy, which can be used to develop the countries. All in all, I don't think that the cryptocurrency mining is actually damaging the world as much as people are led to believe, but I also think it is a problem and we need to strive for more renewable sources of energy when Bitcoin mining. So that's it for the video, guys. Please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed. Also, don't forget to watch the video in the recommended section at the end of this video.